Welcome to our lecture tonight on heavy metal toxicity. So, heavy metals are a big thing that we're seeing all over the country, but especially now. So, a lot of things are being tied to heavy metal toxicity that goes back to our grandparents and before that generation. So, a good comparison for heavy metals is when we um, are living in homes or old paint. So anything before 1978, for instance, for lead, these are the things that are starting to come out where they're realizing, hey, if you used X, Y, and Z product back in the day, this is something that could potentially be hazardous to your health now. Now, not saying they didn't ever know any of that, because at some point they did, right? Because the stuff started being taken off the market, or things were revamped, or things were changed. And, fish, they were checking for mercury and don't eat fish while you're pregnant and don't do this. So they know that there's been an association with these things, but it's now becoming more and more out there. Now, is it just due to more educators? Is it due to more researchers? I don't know, but the fact that there's awareness on the heavy metal toxicity is great. So I'm going to focus tonight a little bit on just the general toxicity, some basic symptoms overall, and it's going to be very broad. So when we see our heavy metal toxic patients in the office, we have some that just come in and they get full wellness panels and they do all their toxicity tests then, and they're, significantly elevated or high, but they don't have symptoms yet. So sometimes it's a calm before a storm when they are getting this testing done. And then there's others that are just debilitated with pain, have some Alzheimer's, some memory issues, whatever the case may be. So there's one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. So tonight we're going to focus on what you need to look for. What are some of the most toxic heavy metals that we see in our results on our analysis, how we collect our heavy metal test, and then what we do to actually help treat it. So again, the process across the board is not going to be the same. That's why we're different. That's why we focus on what we do. We see the success that we see people get better, and that is what drives me every day to continue to do this part of functional medicine. Heavy metal toxicity has always been something that's been close to me ever since learning about detoxification and detox pathways and epigenetics and MTHFR and glutathione, and we can keep going. But the heavy metal part really has just been a big burden on that, and just learning, all the different symptoms and what can be a part. I actually had to do my heavy metal test in July for a part of my certification, and we had to go down, we had to analyze our own results. And it was very interesting. And usually we do a collection for about 8 hours of urine. And for me, we were only in lecture for 4 hours. So we did a half a collection. The results were still insane. So I myself still need to undergo this chelation therapy. But at some point, right, we take care of others and then eventually we take care of ourselves. That's how it goes. So eventually I'll get to this process too, but it's one of those things where you don't want to put it off. And even myself, I know that, and we're already in the process of doing it, but it's just, there's so much on people's plates sometimes they just don't know where to start. So is what we do in our office, we're going to help prioritize that. So if we're going to take all your symptoms, we're going to analyze your plan. And if we have, something more chronic viral going on versus something heavy metal versus more of a cardiac issue versus something more autoimmune, we're going to try to put the entire picture together, formulate a plan, and figure out exactly what needs to be done in which order so that we can have the best outcome for success and make you feel the best that we can to actually get to the root cause of the problem. So let me pull up some notes here. So I made a list general of like some of the basic things that I've seen from our most severe toxic heavy metal patients to our not so severe toxic heavy metal patients. I've seen things from just general tremors, headaches, infertility, some mental fog, brain fog, etc. Anxiety and depression are huge for metal toxicity, huge, huge, huge. And we see a lot of this from the population of like in between the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Obviously, we see it way before that too. But if I have to take everybody that we see in general, we're looking at mainly that population. Um, eye issues, we've seen some poor kidney problems, obviously, right, from filtration purposes and detox pathways. That's a huge problem. Digestion is probably another one of our second top issue on top of anxiety and depression. A lot of people have GI issues, and they would never think that it would be contributing from heavy metal toxicity. But where's everything going to sit, right? We're taking things in. Our GI tract is a huge, huge part of our body. It's going to definitely absorb a lot of things there. neuropathies. So we see a lot of like numbness and tingling in their fingers or their toes, or they get weird different vision problems, or they get twinges in their head or different twinges throughout their body, stuff like that. So more neurological. And then just poor immune function overall. They're always sick, they have autoimmune disease, recurrent infections, whatever the case is. And what's interesting is a lot of these people that are studying heavy metals are finding, like on autopsies and stuff like that, brains of those with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's are showing a high amount of toxic heavy metals. So not only is it something that's just a little bit here and there, but it's showing at a high level. And so if we can help to detect that at a younger age, or if we start to have problems, reverse the symptoms, wouldn't that be the best outcome for the patient? And that's what we try to do. And I'd say there's no guarantee ever with anything that we do that anything's going to be 100%, but we sure as heck try, and we try hard, and we don't give up. And if we can't figure it out, if there's something else going on, we reach out to another provider and we say, hey, we got this patient, let's figure it out, right? So we definitely have a team approach because we have to. We want the best for the patient. So when we look at a heavy metal test, I couldn't share screens. We had some issues actually, that's why I was late coming on. But when we look at heavy metals, there's an entire report that comes out. We've used a couple different companies. Currently, we're using doctors' data, and I do love them. And what's nice about them is they're a huge company, but they're also local in St. Charles as well. So the top metals that I'm definitely more concerned about are mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, gadolinium, and aluminum. So when we're looking at those metals, we look at the chart. There's never been a patient that I've had that's not had a little bit of some sort of a heavy metal in all of that. Now, the problem with that is those are the 6 most top heavy metals in our body that we can have that can cause some issues in our body. So we really shouldn't have any of that. So some patients will read the analysis and they'll be like, well, I'm a 10. And they're just a little bit onto the chart and I'm still in the green zone. So it's not bad. I don't have much lead, or I don't have much gadolinium, which is from the MRI contrast, or I don't have much of whatever. It's like, okay, but your body still recognizes it as a toxin. It's still a carcinogenic. It's still going to cause oxidative stress and free radicals and all this stuff and cancers, and the options are endless. We got to get it out. We got to pull it away. We got to help fix the problem. We got to decrease the stress. We got to repair the mitochondria. We have to put the fire out, right? All of that is a big part of functional medicine. Okay, so another big thing that we see, and it's not as necessarily considered toxic, but titanium. Titanium is always so high in so many patients. And for a while, I was like, are we doing these tests wrong? What's happening? Because I'm very analytical of my results. I want to see and know exactly why things are the way they are. And if I have concerns, I reach out to the companies, the directors of the companies, the scientists, the pharmacists, whoever's doing it. And I say, what is going on with these tests? What I have found between the pots and pans that people are using, and for women, if you guys can guess, the one thing that women use that has a really high amount of titanium dioxide in it. See if anybody can figure it out. Let's see if I can get some comments in. The number one thing that women use that has high amounts of titanium dioxide. Can anybody figure it out? Anybody want to comment on that? Let's see. Anybody? Okay. So everybody's being shy tonight. The biggest thing that we see with titanium dioxide, okay, nail polish, that's a good one. Nail polish is something that a lot of people can use. That's not it, but that's a good one. Especially in all like the gel no chips and stuff as well. That can definitely be an issue. But the number one thing for titanium, and especially it led to, but especially for titanium dioxide, is makeup. What are most people using right now? Mineral makeup. Okay. The worst thing that you can do is use a mineral makeup. And it's interesting because if you look at all your labels, it can be organic, it can be whatever. And if it contains titanium dioxide, it's right on there. It tells you exactly what it is. When I went and I did my heavy metals test, let's say I bought organic products and I did organic, lipsticks and stuff like that. But there was something else. I'm like, why are my titanium levels so high? And that's what it was. It was the mineral makeup. So I came home, I read through labels. I bought a product the other day, actually online, my fault. But that's a whole other situation of not wanting to wear masks to go into stores. And I bought one and it said it was good and I got it, and titanium dioxide was hidden right in the middle of the ingredients. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So I sent it right back. And it's frustrating because it's like we try so hard every single day to live up to the standards of trying to eliminate the toxins and cooking with the best pans and not adding, GMOs and non-organic and processed foods to our diet. And then something that you can be seriously putting on your skin that controls, 60% of the absorption. And then what you're putting on, 25% of that's getting into the bloodstream. And it's within a very quick time, minutes, that's being absorbed. That's going right into us. Okay. So over time, this stuff just continues to build up. And that's what a lot with the lead, too. The number one ingredient in 90% of lipsticks is lead, believe it or not. So something just to pay attention to and watch and read your labels. And it's like we read labels for um, our foods and everything like that. But sometimes, and most people do for, I would say, their products and things as well. But makeup is a very tough thing. You can't always get all the ingredients or read all of them and figure out what you're doing. So again, women, just kind of pay attention to your products and what you're using there. Another one that we see too is rubidium, and that's a more of a soil toxin, I guess, or a soil heavy metal. So we see that high in most people. Considered non-toxic as much as the other ones. And we see a lot of that for our root vegetables. So our potatoes and our carrots and et cetera, kale, whatever's growing in the ground, you're going to see that higher in patients. And you can do organic all you want, but it's just the soil and it's part of that natural mechanism. So that's another one that I tell patients we don't have to worry a ton about. But believe it or not, this entire association here with heavy metals, one of the biggest things, like I said, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but now studies are being done, and this links to last week's talk as well. We're seeing a ton of stuff with diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And now they're saying, oh, autoimmunity, finally, autoimmunity is being recognized. Autoimmunity may be from heavy metal toxicity. Very interesting, right? Something that we've always considered. If you ever wanted to do a heavy metal test 5-10 years ago, you were looked at like you were crazy. Your people were doing hair analysis and sending them out, but you were the crazy one. And now they're saying, oh, wait, we're showing that these things are actually causing this oxidative stress and this mitochondrial dysfunction. And it's causing the calcium to build up in the arteries, and these plaques are getting put into the arteries. What are we testing, right? Like this is all common sense stuff. So this is all what we do. So again, an individual approach. Anytime I have a cardiovascular patient, someone with diabetes, someone with these issues, we are definitely doing heavy metal tox. We're ridding those metals. We're helping these patients. So let's break down a couple of the metals real quick, the more toxic ones. So mercury. One of the biggest things for mercury is seafood. So our fish, anything with a body of water. You can do organic as much as you want. You can do omegas as much as you want. This will be another conversation for another day. I've actually learned a lot about omegas over the last 6 months. I've learned a lot of just about olive oil over the last 6 months and how it should always be in your fridge and it can go rancid and this and that. Well, the same goes for your fish oils as well, liquid fish oils, whatever the case is. You may not always be able to guess that. So I recommend now a lot of plant EFAs and plant-based essential fatty acids versus omegas. Again, a whole nother conversation, but food, seafood, mercury, not a good thing. Okay. So again, one of those biggest things as to why they're saying not to do seafood during pregnancy. That's a big factor. What's another thing for mercury? All the fillings. Okay. That's a problem. I don't know what year it transitioned over. I meant to look that up. Someone knows that, they can definitely shout it out. But at some point, they transitioned, realized that mercury was an issue. Remember all the thermometers back in the day? The best thermometers that you could have that were actually the most accurate versus the stupid temporal ones or the ear ones that read 107. They're never accurate. The mercury, they realized, okay, that's bad. We took that away. They realized for the fillings, those are bad, but they're like, let's just pull them out. Oh no. So we see a lot of people that have had their silver fillings removed very improperly, very unsafely, and that has led to some significant toxicity in patients. So if you had any mercury fillings that were removed, not by a biologic dentist, not someone who knew exactly what they were doing, that used a bite guard in your mouth, a throat guard, all these different stoppers, all the different hazmat suits, and all the different biologic equipment, you didn't have it done right. And you should definitely look into a heavy metal toxicity test at that point. That's all I can say about that. And it's because I've seen it. And it's not because I'm being, I am very blunt, but it's not because I'm being mean or trying to make you feel bad, but it's just the truth, when it comes down to that. So make sure that you're definitely paying attention to your health and you're doing research on what's being done to you at that point. Okay. Another thing that's also changed over the years, even though it's largely been eliminated by pharmaceutical companies, is mercury in vaccinations as a preservative. They did realize that was causing some issues, so they did pull mercury out as well. All right, moving on from mercury. Lead. So we kind of touched based on lead a little bit, but the biggest thing is lead-based paints in 1978. So those who've been to my pediatric practice know that we do a lead screen on kiddos, and we just kind of ask simple questions. And one of the biggest questions was, were you living in a home prior to 1978? The big thing about that too was the windowsills that were around that were painted. So what do kids do? They pull up to those windowsills and they put their mouth on them and they chew on it. Or a lot of lead-based toys. So again, people that were from like 40s, 50s, 60s, even 70s were seeing a lot of high lead in their blood because what's happening is that is just kind of circulating through because they were exposed to those lead-based toys and stuff like that. A lot of it can just be from soil. It can be from different, jobs, copper pipes, welding and stuff as well. But if you're looking at the most thing, it was more of a paint additive. All right, cadmium. So another big one that we see that can be very toxic is cadmium. And everybody's like, well, I don't know where I got cadmium from. I don't work with batteries. I didn't have any exposure with this stuff. And that's not a heavy metal toxicity. I didn't work in the industry and I didn't work in any, different warehouses and stuff like that. And then I say, okay, did you smoke? Did your mom or dad smoke? Were you ever around secondhand smoke consistently? Did you work in a bar, back at a restaurant when you can smoke inside? There's usually always a yes to those questions. That is one of the biggest things. So a little blurb that I found is that tobacco smoking will expose a smoker to cadmium because the tobacco plant is a concentrate in the environment, such as from the soil. And then also rice is tending to accumulate cadmium as well, especially if the rice is grown in areas that formerly grew tobacco. So especially that says more like the southeastern US, but if those were formerly tobacco, oh my gosh, I'm completely stuck. Tobacco fields, sorry. If those were formerly tobacco fields and now they're growing rice or they're growing different crops, what's going to happen? That's embedded in the soil, okay? So you can do the best you can, but sometimes the past is the past and that doesn't go away. Arsenic. So arsenic is pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes we joke with patients or they joke with us. They don't know how they got arsenic. Maybe their husband was mad at them, right? Maybe their wife was mad at them. It's kind of a running joke. We all know that from rat poison, things like that. But a lot of it's just exposure to the environment and cigarettes and stuff as well. It can be from some pre-treated wood and some different chemicals for that type of stuff too. But chronic exposure, cancers, cognitive dysfunction, diabetes, lung and heart damage. Look at like all the ads you see now from asbestos and like how that was such a problem. This is what we're going to start seeing, and this is what we are seeing from heavy metal toxicity. This is not new, and it's causing a lot of dysfunction in patients. So how do we test these basic metals? So we personally do an oral challenge of EDTA. So what we give you is we give you 7 chewable tablets of EDTA, which is the binder that binds to these heavy metals to help rid them out of your body, okay? So we give you these tablets, you chew them at night before bed, you go to sleep, you try to hold your urine. If you can't, we give you a little bucket that if you needed to urinate in there, you would do that, and then you would just keep adding to it throughout the night until the morning, and then you would take a sample from the big tub. But in general, you would hold all night and you would go first thing in the morning, you would collect that urine. It comes in a pre-postage stamp bag, comes with a tube, you put it in there and you send it off. Very, very simple, very, very foul-proof, super, super easy, quick results within a week. That's how we test it. And the reason we do the challenge with the EDTA is because we want to try to pull as much as we can. And it's not enough to cause symptoms. It's not enough to cause, like people would ask, well, am I going to have a Herx reaction from this? It's not going to be anything like that. It's very little, but it's going to give us some sort of an accuracy of how much to gauge is in your body. So that's what we do for it. And then how do we treat it? Well, we definitely treat it with chelation. To me, chelation is very safe. I know there's a lot of controversy out there about chelation not being safe. I've been asked so many times to do chelation on kiddos, and that I won't do. So we don't do anything IV or intravenous on anybody who's less than 16. And there's many reasons for that, but a lot of it is just immature liver and immature kidneys, okay? It's nothing more than that. But truly, with what the EDTA does is that it binds to these calcium deposits. So it's going to bind to the different, things within the arteries. So let's just say that we have high amounts of plaque. We have high amounts of, our MPO levels are severely elevated. Our diabetes is through the roof. We're showing all this different dysfunction and oxidative stress, etc. It's going to bind to those plaques. It's going to almost rototill the entire artery. It's going to help push out that stuff. We're going to decrease cardiac overload. We're going to decrease the cardiac symptoms. We're going to help reverse that diabetes cycle and remember what's going on. We're going to take away what's causing the mitochondrial dysfunction. We're going to help that process. So if we can help that process, the mitochondria know how to continue to build up energy and rejuvenate and do good for themselves and allow those cells to do better. And so a lot of these symptoms, just like anybody, some people are tired and they're worn down in the beginning, but then they improve drastically and they improve greatly. And then they feel like $1,000,000 and they're like, that was just so great. And the process is long. It's anywhere from 16 to 30 weeks. It's not fun, but if you want to get better, better doesn't happen overnight. And that's what I tell these 60 and 70-year-old patients I see is this is 60 and 70 years worth of buildup in the body. We can't just pull it out overnight and be like, hey, you're fixed. Your heart's perfect. Pancreas looks good. GI tract is normal. Brain looks awesome. You have no issues. Be on your way. If that was the case, everybody would do it and there'd be no dollar amount that would stop anybody. But it's a process and we have to take it slow. We do significant monitoring throughout the entire time of our EDTA or our chelation therapy. We're consistently checking your kidney function. We're making sure that everything looks fine, and we're being very diligent on that. Always have a nurse on site to assess symptoms. We always have things on hand to help with any side effects, which we very, very rarely see. So that's how we treat it, and that's what we do. And it's one of those things where not everybody's, again, going to have the same opinion. We're not going to have the same output. Everybody's going to respond a little bit different. I'll do chelation on people and they'll be like, I literally within 4 treatments, they feel amazing. But sometimes within, it takes 2 weeks for others. So everybody feels a little bit different and it's just a slow step process. But the biggest part of this is just to recognize that heavy metal toxicity is very significant and it should not be put aside. And I've learned so much more about that over the last 6 months that I felt I really needed to just to get on here and share that with you to know you are seriously exposed to these toxins every single day, no matter where you're at, from pollutants in the air to products that you're putting in your body to pans that you're cooking in. So we need to stay on top of our health and we need to keep our body going. And that goes into the post I made today about glutathione. And it's recommended to do an IV vitamin infusion once a month with the glutathione push. And we filter out that liver. We make sure those detox pathways are open. That in general is going to help to, bring down the oxidative stress and allow the mitochondria to not be so dysfunctional. It's going to allow us time to rejuvenate and keep up. Now, eventually, like I said, is it going to catch up to you? Sure. So you don't want to put this stuff off forever, but it's going to give you a time to take a step process and figure out exactly what you need to do. So that's what we do in our office for heavy metals. That's just a little gist. Like I said, we could seriously talk for 3 hours, if not more, about heavy metal toxicity. But I didn't want to overwhelm you. I wanted to leave this really, really good in just layman terms and just say, hey, these are the basics. Here's what you need to know. Here's how we test it, and here's how we treat it, and boom. And that I'm pretty sure that's what I did. So thanks for those who commented and gave us some comments about different lead toxicities and stuff like that. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to comment, to email us, to reach out to our office, and we could be happy to answer any of your questions. Have a great night.